December 14, 2008, Buffalo, New York. 12,000 people are on their feet, screaming in adulation and celebrating in ecstasy. In the middle of the ring, the man they've come to see is collapsed on the mat, title belt clutched to his chest, shaking, barely able to process what's just happened. Because Jeff Hardy isn't acting. For 14 years, he chased this moment, lied about his age to get in the door at 16, got beaten so badly in his first match, he nearly walked away from wrestling altogether, spent years jobbing for an opportunity, getting fired for drugs, suspended, released, and rehired. And somehow, against the odds, he just won the WWE Championship.
Daredevil to champion! From enigma to icon!
Within 12 months of this moment, Jeff Hardy would be arrested.
In 2009, I pretty much chose drugs and alcohol over professional wrestling, the chance to be a huge wrestling superstar.
Within 3 years, he'd give what's widely considered as one of the most disgraceful performances in the history of professional wrestling, visibly intoxicated in front of a live audience.
It was shocking. You know, it's like one of those things where your heart drops to your stomach and it's just like, ugh. It's just so devastating to watch, and you just hate it for him so bad.
He'd be fired again, rehired again, arrested again, and again and again.
Rock bottom definitely for me would have been after the third DUI in that cell. I didn't know what was going to happen, man. I was so afraid that I was just not going to make it.
By the time you finish watching this video, you'll see how Jeff Hardy was arrested for substance offenses multiple times, how he was fired by the WWE twice, how he spent time in jail, how he drove drunk so many times it became a punchline, and throughout all of it, every fall, every arrest, every disgrace, he'll have remained one of the most beloved figures in the history of the industry.
Despite the fact that he did something really very stupid and selfish and every other adjective you could think of that's bad, people like Jeff. People love Jeff.
He was self-destructive but resilient. He became the WWE Champion and reignited his career multiple times over. But he started out as a 16-year-old with a secret. At 16 years old, Jeff Hardy walked out in front of a national television audience and wrestled one of the biggest stars in the company. He lied about his age to get a foot in, and by then there was no turning back.
I said, "Hey brother, just put your birthday back a few more years, man. You need to be 18."
He said, "Move your birthday back 2 years, brother."
Yeah, and I was so nervous, man.
To understand how Jeff ended up here, we have to go back to a backyard in Cameron, North Carolina. Jeff and his brother Matt were obsessed fans who built their own backyard wrestling promotion out of nothing but cheap props and pure stubbornness. The Trampoline Wrestling Federation turned into Omega, and somehow this obsession had just got them through the door of the biggest wrestling company on earth. But they weren't signed, they were jobbers, the guys whose entire role is to lose. Their purpose is to get destroyed by the stars and make them look unstoppable. It was a tough road in, and for most wrestlers, it was the only road in, because if you impress the right people in defeat, the company might actually sign you. This was the dream the Hardy Boys were chasing. An underage Hardy was thrust into a matchup on the main event of the June 6, 1994 Raw with the bad guy Razor Ramon. But it wasn't exactly Razor versus the man who would become the charismatic enigma Jeff Hardy. Aside from being a teenager, Hardy was given the alias Keith Davis.
Jeff was called Keith Davis in that match.
The real Keith Davis had been booked to wrestle Ramon, but because of his sore neck, Davis didn't want to take the bad guy's finishing move, the Razor's Edge, and so Jeff was thrown into the mix.
10-15 minutes before the match was going to happen, he came and said, "I can't do that. I can't take that Razor's Edge. I got a bad neck. It's going to hurt my neck. I can't take it. I can't take it. I can't do it." So then Sam's like, "Oh, we'll get somebody else. Get this brother right here. He can take any bump. He's like a rubber man." And then then Scott Hall's talking to him, and he's like aggravated. He's like, "Yeah, I'll just do this and kick this. And just listen to me." And he went out there and he kind of took out his frustration on Jeff.
He was real rough and out there, and I was going, "Oh my God," and that ring was so hard.
He took the maneuver like a champ, to the point where it got him locker room cred with the boys for how well he bumped and sold all throughout the match. Ramon was even apologetic for how hard he roughed up Hardy.
And there was a point where he drove him into the post and his knee hit the post, and he felt real bad for that.
Just like that, the 16-year-old battered and beaten Jeff was slowly on his way, though he questioned if it was all worth it due to the punishment he'd just endured.
But yeah, after that match with Ramon, man, I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this.
Really?
I was not sure if I ever wanted to wrestle again after that night. First of all, that hard ring, and I was just out there, didn't know what I was doing.
But before he could think about quitting, Hardy was already booked for the next night. He worked against the 1-2-3 Kid, someone Hardy could have a bit more of a match with compared to the pure squash that was the Razor Clash. The 1-2-3 Kid bout reminded Jeff exactly why he'd lied about his age in the first place to get here.
Well, the next night I wrestled X-Pac, the 1-2-3 Kid, and that kind of refilled my soul to want to remain in the pro wrestling world.
From this moment on, Jeff Hardy would get knocked down more times than most wrestlers, by his opponents, by his own demons, by the system itself. He just refused to stay down, but proving that would take its time and toll, and it cost him almost everything, but it started by learning how to fly. For the next 4 years, Jeff jobbed, but continued to do it well, usually doing so in tag matches with his brother Matt. Then in 1998, the WWF finally signed them to a contract.
I mean, we'd been doing it for almost 4 years at that point. We were probably a little frustrated to a degree. But he said, yeah, they're going to sign you. And they did just a few months later.
The Hardy Boys were officially born. The Hardys became one of, if not the most exciting tag team ever in the history of professional wrestling. Their level of acrobatics and high-flying maneuvers were unseen in the WWE at the time, and they would later be a big reason for the introduction of the fan favorite tables, ladders, and chairs match. They were rightfully crowned WWE Tag Champions for a total of 6 times while competing as a team. By the year 2000, the Hardy Boys had been full-time roster members for 2 years. They had achieved relative success capturing tag titles and having the first tag team ladder match with Edge and Christian, the team the brothers are probably most associated with, but that pales in comparison to the heights they were about to reach. They stole the show at WrestleMania 2000 along with the Dudley Boys. Then at SummerSlam that year, they all competed in the match the 3 teams pioneered, the tables, ladders, and chairs match, TLC. The lengths the teams were willing to go to entertain, no one had ever seen before. So successful was the SummerSlam encounter, a sequel was booked for WrestleMania 17. Once again, they stole the show, with Jeff performing the big death-defying stunt in all 3 matches. These became moments etched in wrestling fans' minds forever. Always known as an acrobatic and high-flying wrestler, Jeff was now establishing himself as a risk-taker, a daredevil, someone who above anyone else was willing to sacrifice his body in the ring. These awe-inspiring displays, his never-say-die attitude, his cool factor, and unique look was quickly making Jeff a fan favorite. He was the outsider, the guy that never quite fitted in. He embodied the grunge spirit of the 90s and early 2000s. Fans could see themselves in him, yet at the time saw him as superhuman. Jeff was hot, and the powers that be were starting to notice. On the April 12, 2001 SmackDown, a 23-year-old Jeff Hardy challenged Triple H for the Intercontinental Championship. It was a mismatch on paper, given Triple H was already a 4-time WWF champion and the top villain in the company. He was the game, and this bout would prove to be a big test for Hardy. Jeff was dominated for most of the matchup, until Triple H, enraged with the referee Tim White, pushed the ref to the mat. With the referee down, Matt Hardy saw an opportunity, ran to the ring and hit the champ with a steel chair. Jeff connected with his patented Swanton Bomb finish, and in a huge upset, defeated Triple H to win his first singles championship in WWF. Sure, Triple H won it back a week later, but few even remember that. Jeff had won it, and that's what matters. The reaction said it all. The potential was there for a Jeff singles run down the line, and this wouldn't be the last we hear of the game in this story. In fact, upsetting Triple H in high-profile matches would seem to become a habit for our Jeff. Over the next year, Jeff's career began to stall. The company didn't really know what to do with him. They were unable to capitalize on the buzz generated from the IC title win. The Hardy Boys acted worn thin in some respects, but Jeff at least had a lifeline in that we were going to see what he could do as a singles competitor. He'd eventually be in the mix for the European title, but before that, Hardy had one of the most important matches of his career against The Undertaker for the WWE Championship. And better yet, it would be a ladder match, one of Hardy's specialties, and a complete foreign concept for the legendary Taker, who'd made his name as the unbeatable, mythical, and iconic phenom. Take was the seasoned veteran in the midst of a dominant title run, but no pinfall was even required here. Jeff just had to climb the ladder and make himself famous. Easier said than done for sure, but Hardy, Taker, and Jim Ross on commentary made us believe with the story that was told. It was a true underdog tale as Jeff kept coming back. Story of his career, really. And just for a moment in time, we all thought he could do it and win the big one. Eventually, the inevitable happened. Undertaker won, but Jeff's performance was on everyone's lips. Afterward, he got on the mic, looked at the most terrifying man in wrestling, and said, "You haven't broke me, Taker."
Oh, tell me he's not talking.
You haven't broke me, Taker! You haven't broke me!
Then instead of destroying Hardy all over again, the villainous Taker patted Hardy on the head and raised Jeff's hand. The most respected man in wrestling was telling the entire industry and everyone watching that this kid is the real deal.
Oh my God, I think I realized in that moment I can be a big star if I really want to, commit to this thing.
Jeff Hardy had just been anointed by a legend. The sky was the limit. All Jeff had to do was not mess it up. A few months after the Undertaker match, Jeff was on Raw having a backstage confrontation with one of his childhood heroes, Shawn Michaels. Shawn looked him dead in in the eye and told him something Hardy didn't want to hear. He said Jeff was wasted potential, that he had to figure out who Jeff Hardy actually was and commit to it, or he was going to throw the whole thing away. And while this should have been a launching pad to get Hardy back to where he needed to be, it wasn't. By April 2003, less than a year following the epic with Taker, Jeff was gone. His matches had become sloppy, he was no-showing events, behaving erratically backstage, whispers turning into rumors, and rumors turning into reality. The drugs had taken hold, so WWE gave him an ultimatum: go to rehab. Once he refused, they let him go. Hardy later admitted to being in denial of his issues.
You know, I had such an opportunity to be a huge wrestling star, man, in my younger 20s, but, you know, I just went another direction. And it would be amazing if I wouldn't have fell into that dark place in my life from, you know, drugs.
Over the next several years, Jeff worked with the likes of Ring of Honor and upstart promotion TNA from 2004 to 2006. He would find success with the latter, but suspensions for no-showing events ultimately led to his firing in June 2006. This downfall was a tragic tale all too familiar in wrestling. Jeff had the resolve to come out the other side, but unfortunately, the demons were there to drag him back in. Jeff got clean privately and put in the work to make it back to WWE. In his time away, he watched Edge, his former foe from the TLC matches, become WWE Champion, headlining shows with the company's top star John Cena. Hardy's old rival was enjoying the exact life Jeff was supposed to be living, and so Hardy decided he wasn't done. In August 2006, Jeff returned and confronted the WWE champ Edge directly. It was the universe's way of telling Hardy exactly what he had missed out on, and exactly what he had to strive for. This time, Jeff kept his head down. He won the Intercontinental Championship, brick by brick, match by match. Hardy rebuilt himself into a top star, and the fans who had stuck with him through all of it were louder than ever. Then in late 2007, Jeff found himself in a feud with Triple H, the man who gave him one of the most significant moments of his early career. Only this time, it didn't seem as one-sided. Triple H was still the overwhelming favorite, but over the years, Jeff had proven himself to be a much more worthy competitor and gained immense popularity from the fans. The two were pitted against each other at that year's Armageddon in a match to determine the #1 contender for the WWE title. Jeff was walking into the match as the Intercontinental Champion, the belt he previously won from Triple H in that huge upset back in 2001. The question on everyone's mind, however, was could Hardy, still the underdog in the contest, upset the game again? After a hard-fought back-and-forth contest, Hardy managed to reverse a pedigree attempt into a pinning combination, and once again stole the win right from under Triple H's infamous nose. Finally, for the first time since the famous ladder match with The Undertaker nearly 6 years prior, Jeff had a shot at the WWE Championship. Though this time it wouldn't be against a legend like Triple H or The Undertaker, Hardy would be taking on the legend killer Randy Orton. Surely at this point the stars were aligning for Jeff. He had all the momentum going into the 2008 Royal Rumble event. The crowd in Madison Square Garden were firmly behind him. Jeff's effort was valiant, but he was ultimately defeated on the night. Despite the loss, Hardy was again proving himself as a major player. The WWE weren't blind to this either, as they decided to pull the trigger. Soon after, Jeff achieved a huge victory against his childhood hero Shawn Michaels, the man who gave him that reality check 5 years prior. Jeff was finally starting to prove his star potential. At WrestleMania 24, Hardy was slated to win the Money in the Bank ladder match. The winner of this bout can cash in for a world title opportunity whenever and wherever they like. On every occasion before this, the winner of the Money in the Bank would go on to become world champion. The WWE knew they had a man the audience loved, and he was ready. He'd worked his way back from the brink. He was going to finally win the big one. Once again, all Jeff had to do was not mess up. On March 11, 2008, Jeff was suspended for 60 days for his second violation of the WWE's wellness policy. He was removed from the Money in the Bank match and prematurely dropped the Intercontinental Championship to Chris Jericho. This time though, the WWE didn't give up on Jeff so fast, and he soon found himself back in the title picture. He would face Triple H one-on-one for the gold twice in 2008, though both were unsuccessful attempts. But Hardy was knocking on the door, and it was only a matter of time. He was the guy that was clear, but forces behind the scenes weren't convinced. As revealed by actor and WWE writer at the time, Freddie Prinze Jr., Freddie told Chris Van Vliet just how hard he fought for Jeff backstage.
In the production meeting, a lot of people did not want Jeff to be champion. So I went to Vince after everybody said no, and I showed him Jeff's merchandise sales. And I said, yo, he's selling more than anyone by almost double. Vince looks over at Kevin Dunn, and he goes, nobody touches Jeff till Armageddon. And I knew right there, I was like, he's winning the belt. He's winning the belt. I knew it right away.
In the following weeks, he gained momentum, defeating The Undertaker, the man he lost to in his first ever WWE title match 6 years prior. Following this, Jeff was booked in a triple threat match at Survivor Series. However, Jeff was pulled right before the show. Jeff had been attacked and was left unable to compete, with his longtime nemesis Edge returning and taking Hardy's place. Edge subsequently won the belt. Jeff once again had to watch on, as it was the rated R superstar who was on top again. But despite this minor setback, it seemed like the stage was finally set for Hardy. Edge, Triple H, and Jeff were booked to do battle at the final pay-per-view of 2008, Armageddon, with the WWE Championship on the line. Edge and Jeff had made their names off the back of each other through their tag team exploits almost a decade prior. They were the two breakout stars of their groups, but now Jeff was ready to claim his throne. He knew it. Almost everyone knew it.
I think it's a time where he has to become a champion, because like all these kids that you see with the armbands on and the sleeves, like you got to reward a guy that sacrifices his body that much.
You know, I've always been confident in myself as far as being a main eventer. I think I'd been ready for a long time, you know, especially after about a year, you know, or so after I came back.
Jeff had made his WWE return to confront Edge, when Edge had just defeated John Cena to become champion himself. Edge had stolen Jeff's place in the triple threat match to win the belt that should have been Hardy's, and alongside him was Triple H, who Jeff had beaten to his first singles title back in 2001. The same Triple H who Jeff had defeated to get his title shot against Randy Orton at the exact same event the year before. Triple H stood in the way of him and the WWE Championship for the better part of a full calendar year, the very calendar year in which Hardy shone brightest. He was outselling John Cena's merchandise at one point. If it wasn't going to be Jeff's time now, then when would it ever be?
Jeff was so over at that time, you know, outrageously over with a champion. There's a saying which people were telling Jeff this over and over and over again, black people specifically. They go, man, I loved you when you were the champion. Man, you were bigger than Obama, dog.
Bigger than Obama.
And that has become a thing.
Yeah.
Back in 08 and 09 when I was bigger than Obama, I mean, the people just loved me so much. I didn't have to do any politicking. So, yeah.
You were at the very top, right?
Sure.
The questions remain. Could Jeff defeat both Edge and Triple H? Could Jeff overcome those odds? Well, in the last minute of the match, it seemed like it was going to be a familiar sight for many fans. As Jeff Hardy got into position on the top turnbuckle to hit his finishing move on Edge, Triple H flew in to knock him off his feet. The game then managed to hit a pedigree on the WWE Champion, which meant that everyone knew he was about to win the title for a record-breaking 13th time, as he covered Edge for the pin. That is, until Hardy, who had been out of the camera's view, managed to recover on the top turnbuckle and landed a swanton bomb on Edge, breaking up the pin and knocking Triple H out of the ring in the process. Fans were already losing their minds, as Hardy was now able to pin the champion, allowing him to secure the victory and the WWE Championship. 1, 2, 3. As Jeff falls to the ground in celebration, you can see it's likely that Jeff wasn't doing very much acting here, as the real-life man had overcome so many obstacles and personal demons to reach such a pinnacle moment in his career. Sometimes in professional wrestling, the best storylines are not the ones that play out exactly by the script from start to finish, if there even is such a thing. No, many great moments in the history of WWE have come as a result of having very blurry lines between a superstar's fictional character development and their own personal real-life drama.
Daredevil to champion! From enigma to icon!
After all these years, Jeff had done it. He had climbed the mountain and stood atop it as WWE Champion in 2008. He had accomplished what he and his brother could only have dreamed of when wrestling in their backyard. He wasn't wasted potential. He had worked his way back to the big leagues, and in poetic fashion had defeated these two men with whom he shared so much history. He had bounced back, bigger and better than ever. It was a joyous celebration. There was an electric atmosphere in New York that night. The fans had always stood by Jeff Hardy. He was their champion. He was our champion, and we couldn't have been happier for him. Now all he had to do was not mess it up. In the weeks that followed the grand title win, Jeff was on top of the world. The fans had their champion. The WWE had their guy. The story had its happy ending for all of about 3 months. By February 2009, Jeff had lost the belt to Edge, no less. A great personal feud with CM Punk that preyed on Hardy's substance problems then followed.
You know a thing or two about prescription medication. What I don't think you realize is that you have to go to a doctor to legally obtain some.
But by August, Jeff was gone from the WWE entirely. His contract expired, with both sides claiming it was mutual. The official story was that Jeff wanted a break and needed to heal up from injuries. The unofficial story, the one everybody in the industry whispered about, was that the wheels were already coming off again.
I was abusing the pain medication. I left WWE back in 09 because I was just taking way too much.
But I've taken some.
Doesn't work in the hills.
The work, the schedule, I felt like I was kind of losing myself.
Then in September 2009, the police showed up at his house in North Carolina. What they found made national news. Vicodin, hydrocodone, anabolic steroids, white powder residue, and hundreds of prescription pills. Jeff was facing serious prison time, and in the middle of that legal nightmare, with criminal charges hanging over his head, he made a decision that few in his position would have made. He kept wrestling, but not for WWE.
For a long time, I pretty much, in 09, I pretty much chose drugs and alcohol over professional wrestling, the chance to be a huge wrestling superstar, just because I was scared I was going to fail another drug test or something. And that's sad, the kind of blur I was in.
Hardy signed with TNA, WWE's smaller but main competitor, and within weeks of his arrest, he was back in the ring, performing for paying audiences while facing a potential decade-long prison sentence. It was made all the worse since Matt Hardy was struggling with his own demons during this period. The Hardys were suffering, but wrestling was still their outlet. However, mixing substances with work proved to be Jeff's biggest downfall to this point.
Like, I would never blame, like, I know a lot of wrestlers, and I heard them say, yeah, just life on the road, I'm in so much pain, I had to take them, I've never blamed any addiction issue or alcoholism to wrestling. It's just been my complete choice, my crazy brain thinking, I need to be altered a little bit or celebrate after a good match.
It was the moment that almost ended his career permanently. March 13th, 2011, the Victory Road pay-per-view. Jeff was scheduled to challenge Sting in the main event for the TNA Championship. Hardy walked to the ring visibly impaired. The footage is hard to watch.
And he seemed totally fine when you talked to him?
Oh yeah, he was fine. He was fine when I talked to him. But between then and when he went to the ring, he had obviously taken more medication, which equated to him not being fine.
Jeff's eyes are glazed over. He's swaying on his feet, clearly out of his mind on something. Bookers such as Eric Bischoff and the match's producer D'Lo Brown realized what was happening backstage, but it was too late.
I can tell you on this night, I think it's safe to assume he was hiding wherever he was hiding and doing whatever drugs he brought with him.
You go back and had that final, okay, is everybody ready? Everything good? And that's when I just had a sense that there was something a little off with Jeff. And I remember coming to the headsets and saying, hey guys, I think we might have an issue.
They'd let him go out there, so now they had to find a way to finish things quickly. Hence why Eric called an audible and went to the ring to tell the wrestlers to end the contest straight away.
Well, Jeff was in a bad way that day, and he was deteriorating as the hours went on, more and more as the day went on, and it got to a point where he was just not ready to wrestle.
Sting hit one move and covered Jeff, as if it were real so he couldn't kick out. The bell rang less than 90 seconds after it started. The audience booed the debacle mercilessly. It's widely considered as one of the most embarrassing moments in wrestling history. It was a man so impaired, he couldn't safely perform in front of fans in the main event slot of a pay-per-view.
It was shocking. It's like one of those things where your heart drops to your stomach, and it's just like, ugh. It's just so devastating to watch, and you just hate it for him so bad.
Jeff Hardy had hit yet another rock bottom, this time for all to see.
Bruce Pritchard was there, I believe, and he made me go in the locker room and apologize to everybody, and I don't think I've ever been that nervous in my life. I was so nervous in front of all of these professional wrestlers that I admire and love so much, but I had to go in there and just, say I'm sorry for what I did on pay-per-view.
And I think people were generally sad for Jeff, because Jeff, despite the fact that he did something really very stupid and selfish and every other adjective you could think of that's bad, people like Jeff. People love Jeff. People had a lot of respect for Jeff. It was disappointment for Sting and sadness for Jeff.
It probably didn't help with my issues at that time as well. It probably made me say a little bit more of like, fuck it.
After Victory Road, fans questioned if Jeff Hardy was truly finished. The footage had gone viral. The video was everywhere. The man who'd cried in the middle of a wrestling ring in Buffalo 3 years earlier had just publicly humiliated himself in front of everyone. In August 2011, the criminal case finally caught up with him. Hardy pleaded guilty. He avoided major prison time, but only just. He was hit with 10 days in jail, probation, and a huge fine, plus the lingering knowledge that one more slip-up could put him back behind bars for years. But Jeff didn't walk away. He stayed in TNA and got clean again. For the next several years, he quietly rebuilt his career just like before. He won the TNA title multiple times. He showed up, he was on time, he didn't no-show, he didn't get suspended. Finally, Jeff Hardy was just a wrestler again, not cautionary tale or tabloid story, a working professional doing his job. It was the longest stretch of stability he'd ever had since first going off the rails at the end of 02 and start of 03, and it lasted right up until the wrestling business decided he was ready for another big comeback. In late 2016, rumors suggested the Hardy Boyz would return to WWE WWE after 8 years away. After everything that had happened, the biggest wrestling company in the world wanted him back. And in the spring of 2017, it happened. April 2nd, 2017, WrestleMania 33, Orlando, Florida. Over 60,000 people are in the stadium for the biggest wrestling event of the year. The Raw Tag Title Ladder match is about to introduce an impromptu team that hadn't been advertised. The Raw that followed is one of the loudest crowd reactions in WrestleMania history, because everyone in that building knew exactly what was about to happen. The Hardy Boyz were back. They walked out into a wall of sound. 8 years since their last WWE appearance.
What? Oh my! Things are about to be broken!
They won the tag team titles that night. Jeff Hardy was officially back in the WWE, the very company that had fired him, watched him implode, watched him hit rock bottom, but decided 14 years after the first firing that he was worth another chance, and for a while it actually seemed to work. Jeff was popular, the fans loved him, he was clean and reliable, the story had its second happy ending, but the pattern was waiting, and sadly, it came to pass. In March 2018, Jeff was arrested for driving under the influence in North Carolina. It made headlines, but the WWE didn't fire him. They didn't even publicly punish him, as he returned from an injury the next month, immediately winning another title, working high-profile feuds with Randy Orton and also Samoa Joe, where Hardy's addiction issues were used in the storyline once more.
I was popping some bottles, I was getting ready to come out here and have a toast, but I think we can all agree maybe having a bottle of champagne around you isn't the best idea. Hey, do me a favor, why don't you act like this is an AA meeting and you shut your mouth while I'm sharing with the group.
Then in July 2019, he was arrested again, which was for public intoxication at a hotel. Another arrest followed in October due to driving while impaired. He'd gone drinking after getting into an argument with his wife, but despite both incidents, the WWE kept him on their roster.
In that jail, I said, man, I'm going to rehab for the first time in my life. And with that smile, I was kind of like, this is hopefully the last mugshot ever.
Through 2019 and 2020, Jeff continued wrestling, but nagging injuries limited his ring time. His addiction was again used in a story that led to a 5th Intercontinental title win.
Your life has been nothing but a series of DUIs and mugshots. Please never change. You beautiful.
However, following this reign, Hardy would frequently lose matches to low-down wrestlers who were nowhere near his level. His career was stagnating until another controversial moment occurred.
This is my last chance to get it right. Simple as that. Because if I screw up again, I'm done.
On December 4th, 2021, at a WWE live event in Texas, Jeff left the ring mid-match in an unscripted moment. Then WWE sent him home, and a few weeks after, they fired him. This was the second time, 18 years after the first, for exactly the same reason, as Hardy refused to go to rehab. He'd been drinking heavily following his father's passing earlier in the year. The demons had returned. It is impossible at this point in the story to ignore what's happening. Jeff Hardy has now been fired by the WWE twice. He's been arrested for substance offenses multiple times. He's been suspended, released, rehired, and fired again by 2 major American wrestling companies over the course of his career. But despite this, the door was still open for him to join the world's second biggest wrestling promotion, AEW, who debuted in 2019. This also happened to be the very place Jeff's brother Matt was working. The Hardy Boyz reunited in March 2022 and were all set for a big high-profile run with the company. However, Jeff's refusal to enter rehab 3 months prior meant it was only a matter of time before the wheels fell off once again. In June 2022, Jeff was arrested again for driving under the influence, his 3rd DUI in 5 years. This one came with a felony charge, jail time, and a 10-year suspended driver's license. AEW suspended Hardy and facilitated his trip to rehab.
Could I ask, what do you consider rock bottom for you?
Rock bottom definitely for me would have been after the 3rd DUI in that cell and not being able to wake myself up from a dream, because I'd had dreams about getting a 3rd DUI and that was definitely rock bottom for me. I didn't know what was going to happen, man. I was so afraid that I was just not going to make it.
Jeff returned to action a year later, but there was no way AEW could trust him in a featured role due to everything that had happened. Therefore, his career in the All Elite Wrestling promotion fizzled out.
What the hell happened? What went wrong there?
What do you think, Jeff?
Tell us, Jeff.
Honestly, in my personal problems, naturally getting in trouble with the law. I think I never got a fair chance to redeem myself, coming back. At least that's how I felt. Then I totally understood why, they didn't want to give me that chance. I was, oh God, they can't trust me. I'm just a liability.
Hardy was clean, but knew if he was to salvage anything from the final years of his career, it would have to be elsewhere. Not in WWE, but his old reliable of TNA. They weren't the company they were in 2010 anymore. Nowhere close, but they were willing to give Jeff another shot. Here is the strange thing about Jeff Hardy. If you laid out his story as a list of the firings, the arrests, the no-shows, the prison time, the Victory Road disaster, the multiple DUIs, the public humiliations, you would assume you were reading about a deeply unpopular man, a cautionary tale, someone the industry had quietly written off years ago. But that's not how it actually played out. Each time Jeff Hardy hit rock bottom, every single time the people who loved him were still there waiting when he came back. The fans never stopped buying tickets. The companies never stopped offering contracts. His brother never stopped standing beside him. Most stars who self-destruct this publicly don't get the second chances Jeff Hardy got. They don't get the third, fourth, and fifth chances either. Maybe it's because Jeff never lied about who he was. He never pretended to have it all figured out. He showed up, sometimes a wreck, sometimes a masterpiece, and he didn't hide either version. There's a strange honesty in that, a refusal to perform sobriety the way other stars perform sobriety. He was always just Jeff, and the people never stopped loving him for that.
When I think about legacy and me, like I think I want to go down as the most authentic guy to ever do it. That whole thing of not being afraid to be yourself and not caring what other people think about how you look or what you do or what you say.
Perhaps it's because of what he meant in the ring. The enigma who flew off ladders. The man who looked death in the eye and said, "You haven't broke me." The 31-year-old in Buffalo who collapsed on the mat with a championship on his chest and cried, fulfilling his dream. Or maybe, most likely, it's just that Jeff Hardy refuses, and has always refused, to stay down. Jeff is still wrestling today in TNA and has even reappeared on WWE programming a few times. He's still showing up and has been sober since 2022, but Jeff's story isn't over. He has burned his career to the ground more times than most, and he's rebuilt it more times than anyone in his industry. Maybe that's the whole point. Maybe that's why people love him, because in a business built on scripted endings, Jeff Hardy is the rarest thing of all. A man whose story has refused to end. A man who, against every reasonable instinct, including his own, has spent 30 years getting knocked down by his opponents, his demons, and the system itself, and still somehow refuses to stay down. Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our similar video on the disturbing downfall of Alberto Del Rio. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time.